Hello and welcome to Dropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm Jose.
And we're talking about the new Wonder Woman 1984.
Yes.
It's been stylised in the title as WW84.
Yes.
This has been released in some cinemas, but primarily this is a streaming release, video on demand, HBO Max. And I think it's interesting. It may be a kind of a bellwether in that this is, I think, the first blockbuster, really, on paper blockbuster, that COVID has kept from cinemas and actually released into people's homes. This is the thing that should be drawing people to cinemas.
Exactly. So this is the type of film that should be getting us all to go out, and instead, because of COVID, it's being released in your own home, though it has in some cinemas as well. And I must say, I can't tell if the film is just so bad or if actually seeing it on a small screen makes it worse. Yeah, kind of. That's just a question that now we'll have to ask. I mean, would it have been any better on a big screen?
It was on my mind. I think parts of it would be. I enjoyed parts of it here. And I enjoyed quite a lot of it, to be honest, but I do see all the flaws that people are... Well, I don't know. I haven't read any reviews, but...
I haven't read any reviews.
There's just this general kind of thing going round that, wow, this is rubbish. And people love the first one.
Yes. I think we should remind people that at least my practice in viewing this is not to read anything. Yeah, it's like you watch the film and then you talk about it, and so you're just speaking about your feelings, first impressions. I mean, I rarely have ever read anything on it at all. I mean, I have to look up to see what the actors' names are on Wiki.
Absolutely. But, you know, going around on Twitter and all that kind of stuff, things are in the air. You get the impression, or posts that people share on Facebook.
Yes.
You get, people. You see the headline, Wonder Woman is not that great, or whatever the headline.
Well, friends have been saying how awful it is, and really, it is. Yeah, like my view is that it is. So, I began looking at it generously because the whole of the first scene, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, it might be, who knows what it'll end up being like. But you can imagine how that whole opening, a young girl watching that will go, wow. Yeah, like it's,
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
And how that has been lacking in cinema, actually. So, to have like a young 8 or 9-year-old girl kind of do those amazing feats of athleticism and win and grit, and it has a moral at the end. I mean, that is very rare.
Yeah, and I was saying to you that and then the following scene, which catches up, so the first scene is in ancient Athens or Amazonia, wherever the place is called, with the ancient Amazons, and then the second scene catches up to Diana as an adult in 1984, and she saves some people from some robbers in a shopping mall.
Yes.
And there are elements of that where I was saying, this reminds me of things that I watched in like 1995 when I was a little kid. Things like Dunstan Checks In or The Page Master, which were small and, they were far from the best films, but they had lots of stuff that kids really enjoy. Little bits of silliness, little characters, little moments that really stayed with me and I love.
Yes.
What I said to you as well was part of the problem, and I think we're culpable too, with superhero movies, which are everywhere, is that they are really children's entertainment being taken very seriously by adults. Too seriously. And I thought if this actually really buys into it being children's entertainment, that could be fantastic. And I thought it was doing that at the start. I really enjoyed the opening.
Well, it clearly didn't do that. But actually in the scene that you mentioned, I began to already have problems with it. Right? Because, you can see how there are a whole series of beats, action beats, actually, in that sequence in the mall, and how so many of the elements were missing. Yeah, that, you would expect to have a laugh at certain points. Yeah, that the things that the characters were doing required a laugh at the end, and I wasn't getting it.
Yeah.
Right, and it felt kind of charmless and forced and, not very well done at all, both in terms of action and visually, and in terms of performance. I actually think that to a large extent this whole film is miscast in important ways. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I like Chris Pine very much, and he was very good in the first one, and he's Chris Pine. I mean, he's amongst the better things in the film, so it's not a criticism of him or of his performance or, anything like that. But to me, the whole character is misconceptualized. It's the man that Wonder Woman kind of longs for and dreams about and, wants back, right? And actually, the film never shows you why. Why he's so fantastic and yearned for and wanted, really. He doesn't move very well. He doesn't look very sexy. he doesn't do the action particularly well. Like, you know, so
I do know what you mean. I kind of have a problem with that entire strand of the story. So I guess we should say briefly, the story centres on this magic rock. Diana is a geologist or archaeologist or something like that in the Museum of Natural History in DC, and this rock shows up and no one can really identify it, and it turns out this is magic and it grants wishes. And it's your classic monkey paw thing, to the point where they actually use the phrase monkey paw about it. It's that brazen that you wish for something and it comes with a cost. And so the bad guy, Pedro Pascal, wants his hands on it. He wants all the power in the world. He's a very Donald Trumpy kind of figure. Kind of media mogul, liar businessman, 80s character.
Donald Trump runs through the film, doesn't he?
Yeah. And what Diana wishes for, without meaning to, she's holding the rock and she just thinks, oh, I know what I'd wish for. And it turns out what she wished for is Chris Pine back, because he died in the first film, and he's the guy from 1918 that she fell in love with. Steve Trevor, I think his name is. And so he comes back, he winds up in someone else's body, but then, through movie magic, you see it's actually him.
It's because you see his soul inside.
Yeah, exactly. But the cost is that it drains her power. She's no longer as powerful as she was, and she needs that power to defeat the bad guy, who's gaining more and more power. And as woke as the film is in all sorts of ways, that's really not a very woke thing. She will not give up, the guy who she loves. I said to you, doesn't she miss any of the Amazons that she can't see ever again?
Well, actually, I thought that my reading of it was, the same but different.
Yeah.
In the sense that I thought, oh my God, this is like a lesbian movie. Yeah, in the sense that certainly a feminist one. In that, you can never really be whole or yourself or have the world be in a right place unless you get rid of the man. Yeah. So you have to renounce the wish, right, for that man in order to be whole.
See, I was reading it as she loves him, she's been pining for him for 50 years, and she's finally got him back, and then he has to convince her to renounce the wish to get her powers back and give him up to do it right. And
that's probably more accurate than mine. Yeah, that is what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I found that a little bit. I don't know. It felt like that hadn't been thought through. It was troubling. I actually found that relationship quite romantic, and I found it quite romantic that he was the one who had to convince her. In the moment, it really worked for me, but the kind of overall reading of it seems antithetical to the kind of things that the film wants to.
The film doesn't make sense. I mean, throughout it all, I really, and actually I'm reminded of Victor Perkins' comment, never think yourself superior to the film, because, nobody is, right? Kind of a film is made up of thousands of really great minds and very talented people and people who know all this stuff, right? So it's always a mistake for a critic to think themselves superior to the film. But I thought this film was really quite dumb.
Yeah. Well, I mean, no,
bad.
In things, I think the dumbness in things like the monkey paw, wish thing, could have had a certain charm. And I do think that Pedro Pascal and Kristen Wiig, as the villains, as their villainy develops, they really try to sell it. And I like their performances very much.
I love their performances very much, but they're not well used. So I think they themselves are great, but they are not showcased properly or dramatized properly. There are entire things that you think, oh, this should be in close-up, or this should be from far away, or, Kristen Wiig should have been filmed more elegantly or beautifully, or in a way that, what's the word, that showcases her movement, or, so she often does very funny comic bits with her body that I think are just a bit too far away to have full impact. Yeah, so I think there's all kinds of problems with the direction of this film that I have, and it sometimes sinks them. I think, I mentioned several times, probably because, I was a little bit bored, things like, the hair color, right, on the actors, right? It's atrocious.
Yeah, Chris Pine's hair, I don't know what they were going for with that.
I mean, it's really atrocious. It's a lack of care of, who lets an actor kind of go out with that hair. It's really horrible auburn streaks, kind of seemingly done with a ladle, right? Underneath all this gray. I mean, it's just awful, right? So I think there's a lack of sensitivity to actors and how they look and what they can do, and a kind of a protection of them, actually.
I didn't know if they were, with his hair in particular, trying to if that was part of the his bad fashion sense in the 80s, because he's from 60 years ago.
60 years ago, he would not have been wearing red streaks.
No, but like the thing, they have that scene which you've seen 100 times of him coming into the future and then seeing all the clothes and trying it all on. It's all different, and it wasn't very funny in this. But I thought that might be what they were trying to do. Like, he's wound up with this bizarre fashion sense trying to fit in. But they don't sell it as such. It is just this weird hair that you don't know what to do with.
No. I mean, but he wouldn't have had time to go to the hairdresser. So there's a difference between, having that pretty woman moment with the clothes, where he's just showcasing clothes, which actually is really not very nice or very pleasant, right? Because that is just poking fun at an era, right? I don't even think it's particularly affectionate, really. You're making fun of how, people like me in the 80s used to dress. And part of you think, well, we never dressed like that. Right? I mean, this is all like outfits out of a catalogue or something, right? But partly it also felt a looking down on or a talking down to the era, right? So on the one hand, it's obviously meant to evoke Orwell's 1984, right? On the other hand, it has this whole political messaging about truth and so on that's clearly referencing the Trump era, right? And on the other hand, there is, I suppose, it's trying to feed into people's nostalgia for the 80s, which are a bit in vogue, but actually which the film kind of betrays, because, it doesn't seem to have an affection for it.
No, I think the most effective thing it does with its setting in the 80s is it uses it to build a theme of more, which is what Pedro Pascal's character is all about.
Yes.
So he turns himself into this magic stone by wishing to be it.
Yes.
And then in so doing, he gets people... I think it's quite a funny idea that he gets people to grant wishes he really wants granted by grabbing them and saying, don't you wish for this? And they go, yes. And he goes, wish granted. So he starts to accumulate lots and lots of power doing that. And I think it really engages quite humorously with the idea that, all of a sudden you get into what are the rules of this? And he starts asking that, like, can I do that? What are the rules? So that thing that sci-fi and comic people always have of, how does this actually work? He's doing it too. To the point where it becomes the whole thing of, he gets himself an audience with the president, he manages to get the president to make a wish, he takes all his power and stuff, and then he uses the global television broadcast. And the president says, it touches people all over the nation. He's like, touch? Is this... so... And even then, it's like the film isn't selling it as... It's not trying to sneak that past you, because when he gets into the studio to do the actual broadcast to everyone, he grabs a guy and says, don't you wish this works? So he's not sure it's going to work. I do think that's quite effective and quite funny. And the thing about him accumulating more power and more money and more this, more that, destroys him from the inside and physically destroys him. He gets veins all over him, his eyes start bleeding, his ears start bleeding, and he becomes a worse person. His hair gets worse throughout the film, it's sweating. I do think actually I think that's not bad direction either. I know you're saying, it doesn't make him look his best and everything, but I think the way it shows him physically degrading, and it's also in his performance in that he becomes more frantic and more angry and also lustful for power. I think that works very well. I think he is a well-constructed villain.
Yes.
And that's what it does with the era, in terms of, that Reaganomics era of you can have anything you want, it's all yours. It would fit in that era very nicely.
Well, to a point, but not well enough. So, for example, one of the things that it made me instantly kind of recall is, Mike Douglas' character in Wall Street, right? Mm-hmm. Greed is good, right?
Gordon Gekko.
Yeah. It brings that up to mind, right? But you never get any sense of that. You never get the sense that, the Pascal character here, that there's something good he wants, where it's just like sheer kind of selfishness and power and, and so on.
No, sure, yeah.
So I think
it's just pure villainy. And the film ends with Diana, Wonder Woman, kind of taking over this broadcasting truth with her lasso to the country through the, just yellow screens everywhere. And she addresses them and basically says... She appeals to their better nature and says, be less selfish, give up your wish. It's better for the world.
I wish it would have been worded like that, because actually it doesn't come across like that. And to me it seemed odd and stupid, and actually not thought through that there are implications of this. So she's telling people, give up your wish, accept reality. Reality is beauty. Which is a whole series of Hallmark postcards in, one after the other, of utmost banality and actually falseness, right? Why would you want people to give up their wishes? Right, I mean, obviously in this instance, because it's destroying them. But the idea that people's wishes destroy them is actually a horrible idea.
Well, I think it's, in this, at least to me, it comes across quite clearly that it's more about it's costing the world. It's costing your neighbour. You know, everything is getting worse because of everyone's wishes being turned against them.
Sure, in the narrative of the film, yes. But the film... I mean, these are almost like philosophical moments in the film. Yeah, that kind of deal with truth and so on. So you're telling people, give up your dreams, give up your wishes, right? Like, accept reality. Well, that's very good for you, you know, Miss Gail Gadot, Amazon who can fly, right? You know, but why, you know, if I'm living on a park bench, why shouldn't I wish for a home, right? Like, or why? I mean. That whole thing just doesn't make sense.
Really. It's true. I don't think they show a homeless person wishing. What they largely show, they show an end to the troubles, which is interesting. They show a woman running a cafe in London, I guess, who says to a customer, "I wish all you Irish bastards would get sent home." And then the Irish guy goes, "I wish you were dead." And it's like, fucking hell, that's quite bold. And I didn't know, like. It has an interesting sort of take on the Troubles, and it also has an interesting take on Middle East politics of the time, where when he wants power, he wants oil, because he runs his oil company, Pedro Pascal this is, goes to Cairo and tries to do his trick, and he says, "I'll take all your oil," that's the cost that he's able to extract from the wish. And the guy goes, "We sold all our oil to Saudi Arabia." And I'm going, does Saudi Arabia buy oil? Like, what is this understanding of the Middle East in the 1980s?
I thought all of those things were so stupid. Really, and what's the word? Tactless, really. There's a great central relationship here, which is with the Kristen Wiig character and Wonder Woman, and it's completely badly handled, right? I mean, Kristen Wiig is marvelous. She's marvelous at the beginning. She's kind of marvelous as she begins to get her powers, right? Then I think they changed the actress for the last feline tiger moment. Right, certainly kind of the face looks completely like the face of someone else. I mean, that might just be CGI.
I think it probably... I mean, it looks like extra scenes from Cats.
It does. Yes, Cats Go Wild. Or no, what's that show where with the women who, you know... who show their tits?
Thundercats.
No, the Something Go Wild, yeah. The
Girls Go Wild.
The Girls Go Wild, yes. So this is Cats Go Wild, really. And actually, I mean, I thought it was almost like inevitable, right? That you would have a cat fight, for lack of a better word, with all the negative connotations that has in this film. But actually, I really resented that the weight of the film, the moral weight of the film, kind of what the film is fighting for, the ideas behind the film, weren't actually fought through with women. That kind of, that actually at the end it really becomes her versus Pascal, right? Was actually, I thought they could have done something better. I think there's a kind of a betrayal of women in this film, kind of in many ways, kind of structurally, right? Like, so for example, I would have liked the Pascal character to have had a daughter, right?
Rather than a son.
Rather than a son. I think it would have, made a nice rhyme with the little Diana Prince character at the beginning, so little things like that I think would have added resonance and, and so on.
Well, I suggested that I think the handling of the relationship between Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor is a betrayal of, I think, what the film on paper says it wants to go for. Because I think it turns Wonder Woman into this pining sort of idiot.
And it's a waste. I think, the idea of bringing Chris Pine back is a stupid one. Because he's completely wasted. The character does nothing. It can do nothing. It's completely ineffectual, except for that moment, where he asks her to renounce him, right? So you arrive, you waste 45 minutes of the film, and then you tell her to send you back. I mean, it's a complete nonsense of a character.
In terms of the idea of it betraying women, surely we can see that in the Kristen Wiig character as well.
Yes.
The way she kind of starts to embody a new kind of femininity. So the whole thing at the start about how she doesn't look like Gal Gadot, and how could she, she's so beautiful, and she can't even wear heels, and she wishes to be more like Wonder Woman. Basically, she doesn't know that she's Wonder Woman. She only knows that she's Diana Prince. She says, "I wish I was more like her," And as she becomes more like her, more powerful and standing up for herself, because I think she only makes that wish after she's saved by her, right, from the creepy guy. And so she starts to become stronger, more independent, and more feminine, in kind of the most typical way. She starts wearing sexier things. Everyone remarks upon that when she goes to work. But also she becomes physically stronger. You see her in the gym. But she becomes basically more of a bitch.
I know.
The whole time too.
I think that whole thing is so Hollywood, but Hollywood in the negative sense, that it's a film that lacks culture. You would imagine the Kristen Wiig character to, she's a scientist after all, she's a scholar. You would hope that she would wish for knowledge, right? Or world peace, or a cure for cancer. I mean, the way that the character is conceptualized at the beginning, right? Or to learn Latin, which she doesn't know, or and instead, the wish is just to be able to wear high heels.
Yeah. Well, the wish is to be more like her. So what she sees in Diana is everything that she's not, because Diana does speak Latin. Diana does all this, so. I suppose she's wishing for that too, but the way it's expressed in the film is sexier clothing and a sexier kind of attitude, sexier demeanour, and more powerfully. So when she has a second encounter with the creepy guy who tries to assault her on the street, she fights him off, and it's quite vicious. But I'm sitting there going, this guy really deserves what he gets. He's horrible, and okay, he's been smashed in the face, his nose is bleeding. This is the worst thing. But it's been set up as this is her starting to come out as a villain. I'm sitting there going, I'm really with her at the moment.
Well, I'm not with her, and also, I think that the film reduces Kristen Wiig's lack, that all her problems are solved by wearing high heels and having all the men in the office notice her sexually, is really creepy. Yeah, I mean. And betrays to me what Wonder Woman stands for, because I read the Wonder Woman comic books as a kid, and actually what you always felt was not only was it exciting and beautiful and so on, right, but actually there was always a kind of a bit of a history lesson, or a lesson in Greek mythology, or who Ares was, or who Hera was, or all the gods and the goddesses, right, and it was a reconceptualization of a world in which kind of women were self-sufficient in, Amazon Island, right? All of those things. So there was this combination of the Greek mythology, right? And also a kind of a feminist point of view, and then a kind of a dealing with contemporary issues. In fact, there was a whole series of the comic books where Diana Prince lost her powers, right? And so she just had to get by on karate, right? But she had to go learn it, so she went to a sensei in Tibet or something to be taught, right? Yeah, there's so much in the film about both history and knowledge and learning, and a kind of politics. And this is high shoes and having, men with their tongues hanging out for you. That's what it's all reduced to. I mean, it's terrible.
Yeah. On the other hand, I did make mention that when Kristen Wiig is being seduced by Pedro Pascal, because he wants access to the stone that he knows that she has, that's quite a steamy scene, I mean, if it weren't, well, this is PG-13 or whatever the hell it is, they'd be fucking on the desk, they pretty much are. And on the other hand, when Diana gets her guy back, who she's been pining for 60 years, you see them wake up in bed, and it's there's nothing. What they do is they go for a walk. The way that people in erection pill adverts are oh, finally I can go for a walk with my wife, because they can't actually say what you can do with an erection because it's on TV.
I can go for a walk.
It's like that, right?
Show off my hard-on in public.
It's finally I have the guy back that I love, that I've been waiting for, that I've been missing for so long. I can finally go for a walk with him. It's completely sexless. I found that quite... you're always complaining about people's lack of sex drive in movies. I would have thought this...
Well, I mean, this film had so many things wrong with it that... So I want to specify, I didn't have a bad time watching it, right? It kind of... I love superhero movies. I love kind of, movies with female protagonists. Gadot looks beautiful. So, I don't want to over-complain, except to say it's a really bad movie. It's a really missed opportunity, right? And what kept drawing my eye was actually the direction. That I always, you kept thinking in some of those fight scenes, the camera should be higher, the camera should be lower, there should be more variety of angles, or, kind of everything is at the same eye level. Why? Like, it's so dull, right? Like, there's such a lack of imagination in terms of how things can be shown, or how things can be dramatized or made dynamic, right? Kind of within the frame. That all the other things kind of in a way paled in comparison. The chase scenes are terrible, like the whole scene with going in the desert with after the Pascal character with the lasso and Steve hanging around. It's so dull, right?
I think some of this would have looked a lot better in the cinema. I agree with you to a great extent that there's a real flatness to a lot of the direction, but not entirely. And there were things that I enjoyed. There were things that I think, like when she's lassoing herself and swinging off thunderbolts, I thought in a cinema that would have looked great.
That's a wonderful idea, yeah. So there are moments like that. Not enough of them.
No, not enough of them, and I largely agree with you. Speaking of the lasso, I like her reliance on it in this film, which I don't remember it in Justice League. I don't remember it very much in Wonder Woman. What you had was the thing that it wraps around you and it makes you tell the truth, and they've relied on that quite a bit. There's a very comic moment in, I think it was Justice League, when she wraps it around Aquaman and he starts talking about how hot she is and stuff. But in this, it's a real practical, fighting implement, and she uses it all the time for various things. And I've actually really enjoyed the way that she uses it, the way it's employed.
Well, it looks fantastic, and actually it's one of the few truly dynamic things in the film, that kind of, it's exciting to watch, just her maneuver it so naturally. It's obviously a great special effect. So I agree with you on that, but to me that just points out to the lack in other aspects of the film, really. Anyway, it really is as poor as people say, and I'm kind of disappointed that it is so.
Because it's directed by Patty Jenkins, who directed the first one. Like I say, people really, really love the first one.
Yes.
I had a good time with the first one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, this is,
not great. And 2.5 hours long, which is very long, really.
But I didn't mind that, weirdly. I mean, maybe, because,
I do know what you mean. Like, I was never so... it kept me engaged throughout. But you did feel like there are times when, if you look back, you go, well, this could be compressed or removed. The whole thing with the invisible jet is a really pointless moment.
Yeah.
And it takes quite a while. And they set up this whole thing about stealing the jet to go to Cairo. It's like, you take that out, you would be missing nothing. What you'd be missing is a scene of pointless pro-American spectacle where they fly through the fireworks on July 4th. And it looked quite nice. It would look nice in the cinema. I like the effect of the fireworks kind of wrapping around the invisible jet. But it's not adding up to anything. It is empty spectacle.
But actually, that is the thing about this movie. Like, sometimes you're looking at these shots and you go, wow, this shot must have cost a lot of money. Right? But actually, that doesn't make it beautiful or elegant or dramatic or, it doesn't make you go, wow, or at least for me. But I suppose, want to insist that this is one of those bad movies that I actually kind of enjoyed watching, that I could see myself watching again on television if it happens to be on, kind of, watching 20 minutes of it before turning the channel. I mean, it isn't offensively bad.
What do you think would draw you back? Is it the acting? Is it Pedro Pascal? He would draw me back.
I love Kristen Wiig. I love Pedro Pascal. I love all of the scenes with the Amazons I like. Early on. That is about it, except, I often watch action kind of in the background. I like it. Though this was, I think, very poor. So it's one of those bad movies that may linger a long time, on television and so on, without really offending anyone.
Sure. It does kind of confirm to me what I had in the back of my head, which is that I think Gal Gadot is not really an actor. I don't think she has chemistry with anyone, really. Actually, she almost turned me round when she starts crying at having to leave Steve Trevor. I thought, I'm starting to feel something from her there. But normally I find she's beautiful and she looks the part and everything, but I'm not a huge fan of the way she moves. I don't think she has chemistry with people. I don't think she can deliver a line. She seems so stilted.
I think you're right about all of that, and actually you drew my attention to it, and I think it kind of harms the film. On the other hand, I think she's a star. Like, you can't help looking at her. She's so beautiful, you know. And that really comes out when you see her next to other characters. So at the end, when they bring up her new love interest, right? And you think, who the fuck is he? He looks like a, generic nobody, right? We checked. He's a Hallmark actor. Right?
He's the guy whose body Chris Pine had taken.
That's right. Yeah. So I think there's something to be said about someone who is so incredibly beautiful that you can't help looking at. She is a star, right? Like people like Hedy Lamarr. There have been dozens, and if not hundreds, of really bad actresses who are very big stars, and they're very big stars because they actually do bring something. Yeah, so they might also take something away, like the wishes in this movie, right? But they also bring something, and she is incredibly beautiful and charismatic. I can't stop looking at her, really. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wish you could act.
Well,
but be careful what you wish for.
Yes, that old monkey hand might come and destroy you.
So yeah, I suppose ultimately, like you can sort of recommend this film because it's got something that we enjoyed, even if actually all you're looking at are things you can criticise.
I think I bitched for about 2 hours and 20 minutes.
You did. I gave up on you in the end because I was like, anything you say, I'm just like, yeah, we'll just leave it for the podcast because you were just going, oh, the hair, oh, the direction. I was going, just shut up, watch the movie.
Anyway, people are not wrong about this film. It is very bad, but I would recommend that people see this with very low expectations.
That's probably the fairest way of putting it. Yeah.
Good.
It's all right.
On that note.
And it's Christmas. We're being charitable.
So, thank you very much for listening. We are eavesdropping at the movies, and we are on
Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube. On social media, we're on Facebook and Twitter at Eavesdrop Movies. And the website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.